We're going to be speaking about human design. So, knowledge of self is something that can improve the potency of any individual. If you're working in alignment with the way that you're designed to work psychologically, your potential, your possibilities are going to be exponentially higher. So, I've been learning from Lion about how to understand myself more deeply, and it overlaps well with other systems that I've used and my own knowledge of myself. Now at 40, I've been through a bunch of stuff, and I have some awareness of some of these things. But it's really interesting to look at a system where so much that I know about myself and that's shown up in other systems or experts have told me, it's written in this system. So I would say it seems to be the most intense and dense system of understanding oneself. And we're going to explore what this human design stuff is. I was introduced to it by my lovely wife, and I didn't take much notice. I thought it was a bit like just horoscopes and stuff you read in the back of the newspaper, like, yeah, whatever. But then I've had more and more people bring it to me and gone into more detail about it. And yeah, I've really enjoyed our discussions about it. So I want to give others the opportunity to hear more and ask you some more questions. So how did you come across it, and what was your initial, did you also have that rejection or?
Yeah, thanks, Keegan. Yeah, actually, at first I was skeptical, mainly because of the story of how it came about. This guy named Ra-Uru had a download from a sixth-dimensional being, and this voice came through, and the system came out. And although initially I was skeptical, I knew there was something to it because of what it was combining. It's combining astrology, the I-Ching, the chakra system, Kabbalah Tree of Life, quantum mechanics. Um, so if something can, nice, if something can combine all those ways of interpreting the logos, as I like to call it, like the language of the universe, the archetypal language, then there must be something to it. But at the time, I didn't feel a call to dive into it, probably because it was so in depth and I didn't have a way to apply it. And it wasn't until about 18 months ago or so where a friend of mine brought it up again, and he did my reading, and it made sense. And it made so much sense that it kind of shined light on aspects of myself that I thought were problems or issues, something that's wrong with me that was actually a gift. And then I started to see, this could actually be really used for this business venture that I was starting, my company. And the rest is history, as they say. So it really worked for me. And so instead of putting myself into a container and going like, this is who I am, I was rather like, the analogy I tell other people is, and for people watching this, is put it on like clothing, see if it fits. If it feels good, wear it. Otherwise, you don't need to use it.
Yeah, what was it? What was it specifically that you weren't sure about with yourself, that you were kind of, is this a fault, and then it's shown up to be more of a feature, more of a positive?
Yeah, for me, I'm a manifester, and we'll go over what that means, like the energy type and what the system's really about. But I'm a manifester, and that energy type is meant to start things. Each energy type has a proclivity towards what is best inclined for them. So manifestors start things, generators make the things, projectors refine the things, reflectors, they're kind of like a litmus test for humans. But so the negative, so-called negative aspect of me was I was really good at starting things and ideas, but I wasn't really good at the follow-through. And I thought, there's something wrong with me. I can't finish these things. Why do I always like start things and not finish them? And then I read the profile of a manifestor, and it fit me perfectly. And I was like, this, and a bunch of compassion came into my heart and to my experience, and the idea of informing. So that was another part of my journey that didn't make sense to me. That the manifestor is inclined to inform. It's best that they inform. They have a closed and repelling aura, so it's hard for people to read me. And my whole life, I've always wanted to just do whatever I wanted to do, and I could. Manifestors are like kind of like a self-contained energy. And as a kid, I would just not tell people what I was doing and just do whatever I wanted to do. Either not lie indirectly, but just find my way to do things I wanted to. And I thought there was something wrong with me here, realized, it's just a lack of informing. Started informing people, relationships got better, businesses got better. So those are two aspects I'd say were like the biggest. I could go deeper into profile and stuff, but those are the big those big aspects. Those things were wrong with me before, and then they transformed into being a gift once I knew how to use them.
So yeah, some people who are listening to this are already going to be thinking like, "What's my type?" And so the mybodygraph.com is the one that we've been using, right? Like,
Yeah.
so if you're listening to this now and you want to see what you are, then you could put on pause and go mybodygraph.com, and you're going to see the basics, and then maybe it's going to make more sense. Like all this stuff's more interesting looking at through your own personal experience. But are there others who are maybe generators or other types who, like, in some ways it could be like, let yourself off the hook of like, I'm never going to finish anything because that's my, that's my type. For some, it might be relevant and like, you get things off the ground, but a lot of men would say that that is something that's going on with them.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's probably other stuff, right? Sometimes it's probably discipline and, just setting your goals out and having better systems around things. Like, would you say that there's others who are meant to finish it and they should, not should, but like will have a better experience of life by sticking to things?
Definitely, yeah. I kind of get what you're saying. Yeah. So, let's see here. For me to ground this. It's not as though a manifestor like shouldn't finish something, but it's what is initiating, and how do you find people around you to continue and continue what you've started. So what I actually really want to say is this system is about differentiation. Even though there's only 4 energy types: generator, manifestor, projector, and reflector, each one is a unique, one of a kind energetic expression. Think of it as like a key. Only one person has that energetic key, and when you're around other people, it's like keys in a hole or keys in a lock, right? And we're unlocking those aspects of each other. This is why I like the system. It's society and culture has put us into these boxes. We're told to be a manifestor, go out there and start it, and then we're told to be a generator afterwards. Make sure you finish that thing, or else you're a lazy piece of crap or whatever, right? We're not all supposed to do that. There's a few of us supposed to start it. There's a many of us who are supposed to build it, and there's a very few subset who are supposed to direct it, energetically speaking. So, to what you're saying, with someone's issues, like how is this applicable? You look at your energy type, you look at your strategy, and your inner authority, like how you go about and do these things, and figure out, okay, where aren't you doing those things? What is it like for you to live into that, and what does it mean for you to do that as a team? And then that's where the channels and gates start to come into play. That's the area where it's like we don't have enough time to talk about this, but that's where your unique, the little grooves on the key, like everyone has a key. It's like it's the same shape. You could say that's like the energy itself, but the grooves on the key are like your channels and gates, and that's your unique expression of being a generator or manifestor, and that's how you're going to figure out how to do what you need to do. Because like not all manifestors are supposed to initiate like I initiate. Not all generators are supposed to generate like how you generate. Yeah, so I think that kind of touches on that a bit.
And so are we meant to coexist and co-create? Like, is that also part of the fundamental philosophy of human design?
Yeah, that's what I like it. It's the way I think about it is we're all one unique, one of a kind puzzle piece of the puzzle. And no one else can do your job. No one else can do the thing you're supposed to do. And I can't do what I want to do or what is most exciting for me without someone else. And I actually can't recognize my gift and live into it without someone else. And it really tells this story of like, if you want to be a lone wolf, well, that's just not going to be sustainable.
Is there one human design that, like you're saying, there's some that are relatively content in their own company and they have to sort of be drawn out, like the hermit that you were talking about, number 2.
Right.
But is there anyone that is really like lone wolf that will make their greatest contribution by trying to do it on their own?
Definitely, yes. Yeah. So, I mean, everything's on a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So even though this is a system of differentiation, there's still, on the spectrum, there's going to be like Jorge Acosta. His design is very self-contained.
Yep.
It's best that he goes about and does his thing. But him going about and doing his own thing is going to serve others. Whereas there's going to be other people on the other end of the spectrum where if they don't have really people around to reflect back to them stuff, it's not going to be, like, they won't really know what to do, or it won't be helpful for them. So yes, of course, we all need each other, but some are meant to go on a very solo mission, and that in and of itself is going to have huge influence and be co-creative even though it may be more self-absorbed. Like there's certain channels, like you have a channel called the channel of charisma. It's like, it basically says like, you just do the things you want to do and be really good at them, and that's going to affect other people. Now, is that co-creative? Not inherently, but when it's around other people, it's very co-creative.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
So do you want to break down like some of the different components within the design? Like,
yeah, it'll be helpful for people. So I think it's good to kind of go really big first and understand that the I-Ching, you know, as you're going through this video, looking up the I-Ching and understanding that the I-Ching is these different expressions of yin and yang, hexagrams, and there's 64 of them. And there's also, coincidentally, 64 codons of the DNA. So how I see it is like all those different gates, as in human design they're called, are actually like different genetic expressions. And that plotting of the genetic expression is based on your birth date, your birth time, where you are in the world, and you can say like that cosmic energy kind of comes down into your body. And from that we get the energy types. We get the generator, the manifester, the projector, and the reflector, and then there's a subset of generator called the manifesting generator. Each type is based on their energy, so the aura that they have, and that's like the nonverbal way in which we're communicating and the way in which we know how to do our best work. So a generator has a lot of energy, and because they have a ton of energy, they're able to pull in opportunities and experiences, and thus it's best they respond to something. And it's very paradoxical. Like a generator, paradoxically, has the energy to make everything happen, but if they try to start it, it's a disaster usually. Whereas a manifester, I have all of the ideas, I have the ability to start it, but if I do it on my own, I'll run out of energy. So you can see we need each other. Yeah, so going back, the energy types, yeah, everyone has a different energy type. And then, let's see, manifester, very closed, repelling kind of aura. Projector, it's like very absorbed into other people and they can sample the energy. And then reflector, it's like they just absorb other people's energy completely. So yeah, knowing those energy types are important. And then if you go a few steps deeper, there is knowing the inner authority. So we often appeal to like an outer authority, right? Government or school or something like that. This system goes, there's an inner authority. There's a way inside of your body for you to listen to, like sacral or emotional or splenic. If you're watching the video, just look those things up. And then there is, so yeah, the strategy. I mentioned like a generator should respond. So the strategy is like how you go about using your energy. Each type has a strategy as to best do something, and that's dependent on their energy. So like a projector, they have a unique way of looking at things. They can like offer this unique insight, but they don't have a ton of energy. So it's best for them to like wait for an invitation to offer their unique perspective. If they just go out there trying to like solve all the problems and make it happen, they're gonna completely burn out. So if that resonates with you, you know, you might be a projector, someone who has like a unique ability to solve a problem. They can always see it in a different way that someone else can't, and thinking, oh, I can just do it on my own. Well, you're gonna burn yourself out. So yeah, it's very paradoxical. Let's see, let me ground myself here. So yeah, looking through those main things like your energy type, your inner authority, your strategy, and there's a few other things people can draw off of that, like incarnation cross and their definitions and all that kind of stuff. But it's best.
very deep.
It's super deep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's based off the I-Ching had the 64 types based on when you're born.
Yeah.
And it's like that's part of the foundation of the system, and there's other components that came to him and he understood things in different ways. But it's not like it's one of the oldest books, as you say, that is been teaching us this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think this kind of knowledge was encoded deeply into art, culture, like these codes and numbers and ways of looking at things? Like, this is a big zooming out kind of question, but it's can kind of give context to the discussion as well. Is this one guy's crazy idea, or is this part of how things really work that we've never been exposed to?
I lean towards that this is us looking at nature and seeing ourselves in nature and the cosmos. So the I-Ching, like you mentioned, so the two main structures are I-Ching and astrology. Where was everything in space when you were born, and what is showing up in the I-Ching during your birth. But coming back to what I said is like we're trying to find ourselves in nature and the cosmos, and I say that because the I-Ching is really an expression of masculine and feminine polarity, or positive and negative, whatever you want to call it. And that just shows up everywhere in nature. You can't avoid that. You can't escape that. You can't avoid or escape that. And that roots itself, I'd say, in the Kabbalion, or Hermetic principles. If we look at nature, we find these polarities, we find this yin and yang expression showing up everywhere, and we look at the cosmos, we're finding these things, and then I think it's almost reflected back to us over time. We see this in ourselves. So I don't know if it's so much an idea that comes from a person. Well, maybe the distillation of it, because there's always a filtering process. But the more I look into it, the more I use it. It's like it's kind of like how are we seeing ourselves as an expression of nature and the universe, if that makes sense, from a unique energy point. And this is the vehicle in which I'm expressing that energy. Kind of a weird out there answer, but maybe we can ground it in a bit.
Well, the truth always has to be, or ideas are held in the minds of individuals and passed on. If it's not in anyone's mind, then it's very difficult for anyone to interact with it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why this man needed the download that he got to bring that idea back in front of more people. But
well, and actually on that point, one thing I think it's good to mention, well, two things. One of the things that the system I think is really for is actually for the next generation. And Ra Aru U would say that teaching, like parenting, child rearing, so that we don't just put kids into one plot and be like, a lot of kids are taught to be more employees than to think for themselves. And they're not taught about maybe what their energy proclivity is. So giving them an opportunity to see that there's a way of interacting with the world, or things aren't dead and set, or like when I was a kid, I felt a lot like there was just something wrong with me. I didn't feel like I could fit in. If I was given this, it maybe have given me an opportunity to see, like it's good to ask to do things before you do them, as an example. And then the second thing in regards to application is coaching. Actually, maybe we can tune into that. Like this is such a useful tool for any sort of coach, because most coaches are gonna, maybe not most, but a lot of coaches are gonna say, just go out there and get it, do it. Well, for 70% of the population, that's not the strategy.
Yeah, it'd be good to, like, how does it fit with your coaching when you're talking to men and you want to understand? Is this the first thing that you go to, like, when you work with someone, or where does it fit into your system?
Now it's becoming one of the first things I go to, because so often, at least with my design, I'm here to, we haven't talked about profiles, but if you're watching, another thing to look into is the profile. The profile is how you're going to do your thing, like how you're going to be a generator, how you're going to be a manifester. My profile is to have universalized solutions in a time of crisis. So I always want, people are coming to me for advice, I want to know what their strategy is. I don't want to tell a generator to like do what a manifester is inclined to do, and vice versa. So it's something I go to pretty often, just to see like how can I give them the best direction if they're looking for guidance.
Yeah. And do you get much pushback? Like, half the people watching this, listening to this, are going to be like, this is way out there. Can't imagine why they're having this conversation.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. I do get pushback from generators because they have the most energy, and I'm like, your strategy is to wait and respond. And they're like, what, I'm just supposed to not do anything? And they don't like that. And I'm trying to figure out different language. I like the book, but I also don't like the book because it's very cryptic. And yeah, I've told some generators, like, your strategy is to wait and respond. But if you are a generator, I'm not saying you just sit there and do nothing. Think of the world as an opportunity to respond to. Everything in life is an opportunity to respond to. So sometimes there's pushback. Other times, though, many times, I will look at someone's human design. I'm like, hey, can I tell you a little bit about what I saw? Sure. And then I tell them, you may run into this, you may have found this in your life. This may be a common pattern for you. And they're telling me, like, wow, like, it seems you know more about myself, or even deeper emotional situations. Lots of trust can be gained, which I like when people see that you may see a part of their story that they didn't see, or they're like, how did you know I was running into this issue time and time again? Yeah.
And then going deeper, when you've built more of a relationship with someone, is it something that you continue to focus on? Do you keep coming back to it? Do you see much change in Like, do you look for change in through that lens as well, of like what the person's best tendencies might be? And
Yeah, I've used it most in a context with myself and my two other founders in my business, and it's allowed us to have really deep, trusting relationships, and allowed us to work more within our design, which is upfront really challenging because the generator does a lot of the work. Projector doesn't. I mean, she still does a lot of the work, but we're trying to get her to do less work. But there, on the surface level, it may seem like an imbalance because we're all programmed to, like, if you're not doing X amount of work, you're not doing the work. So for us, like, how I've used it is leaning more and more and embodying it in that sense, and trying to deepen into, like, what does it mean for me to live into my design. And I do that with my co-founders because we're in like a pretty intimate, business relationship. So yeah, I continue to try to deepen it with myself first and with them, and then with clients. What I always advise is just trying a few layers deep first and embodying it, and then going deeper. If you try to dive all the way deep, it's just too much. So that's what I like about the system too. You don't need to know everything right away. Like, you just play into your strategy, right? Like, if you're a generator, try to respond to things instead of starting everything all the time.
cool. What else do you want to share?
I think the thing that is most helpful for people's mind, especially if they're super logical, is, like, I'm not telling anyone that this is how it is. And actually, I don't think it does benefit by going about that, especially when it comes to spiritual stuff. People really resist. They're like, as though they're being told, like, this is how things are. Nothing is how things are. It's how you use it. So if it resonates and you find it useful, then use it. But don't think there's some sort of objective reality that tells you how things are, like human design. Rather, how do you embody that in your life? How do you use that for you? And instead of just like using the scripture or the book, can you take that into your life experience and have a direct experience of what it is, versus being able to say what it is? Because saying what something is, what it is, isn't what it is. Only you know what that is for yourself. So all this that I've said is really just pointing out what human design is. Only until you live into it, then you know what it is for yourself. So that's the greatest thing I could say about anything, is, like, don't listen to what I have to say. Try to do it. Hopefully it sparks action, is really what I'm trying to say in a very fancy way. Is there anything else that you want to add, or like how it's like sparked? What has it sparked in you?
Yeah, I always love these kinds of tools that help you to reflect on who you are, and I've done lots of them. There's probably 6 or 7 that I know exactly what they tell me about myself, and I recommend in getting into that sort of stuff. I think psychology is one of the key areas to understand and to work on, to be able to get the best out of yourself and also understand others. This one does have more detail. There's general tendencies within the other systems that are powerful, but there is some more depth to this, and the strategy that's coming out of it, for me, it resonates strongly with what I'm seeing, what I'm experiencing. So something to try on. As you say, don't look for the single truth from one single source, but if you can see things are matching up and there's something valuable for you there to try on, like you talk about as a suit of clothes, then try it on, test it, see how it feels for you. There's no negative to testing something and realizing, okay, well, yeah, that was what I was thinking this was going to do for me and how I was going to interpret it, and it didn't work like that. Like, you still, at least you took an experiment, you had an experience, you responded to something, whichever way you want to put it, and that's what we're here for. Like, increased awareness, and it stops you being as outer directed. It makes you more inner directed. So you're asking yourself more of, what am I meant to do? And even that thing of authority that you mentioned, I was reading a book recently that's about that there is no authority. It's the biggest myth in mankind. The Jones Project and the Jones movie is a man who wrote books about it, and a friend of mine is a friend of the author. He's like, you have to read this stuff. And it's about, like, the biggest myth is that there is an authority external to you.
Yeah.
But if there is no authority external to you, then what do you do? Like, if no one's going to tell you what to do, if the school's not going to tell you, if the teacher's not going to tell you, if the police officer's not going to tell you what to do, then who's going to tell you?
Yeah.
And this is a bit of an answer to that as well, which is a good thing, because otherwise, what is it going to be? Is it going to be YouTube? Is it going to be like, who's got the answers?
Yeah.
And that thing of letting life be the teacher, directing yourself based on what you understand about yourself, and then have that interaction seems pretty logical in the bigger picture, but probably not intuitive, or I don't think I would have understood that or had that conversation easily 10 years ago, 20 years ago when I was at school.
I love that so much. When we have an inner authority, we take on more personal responsibility. I think that's the danger of having an outer authority, is it gives people the opportunity to go, well,
Yeah.
it's not my fault. When they're, I think the only authority is love, and that comes from within. And if we listen to that, then we're taking on responsibility. Am I bringing more love into the world in my experience, or am I taking it away? And this kind of maybe segues. Like, it seems as though now I'm kind of asking you questions. I hope it's okay. I'm curious though. Like, I know you come from like a kinesiology background and maybe like a very left-brained or educational background, but now I see you opening yourself up to more, let's say, Eastern concepts or esoteric concepts. How has that benefited you as a coach and also as a leader, as a businessman? Do you see it as beneficial, or what would you say to individuals, especially men who are leaders? What's the experience of widening your horizons, and how do you stay grounded but also open-minded?
Yeah, I can get lost in this stuff. How does the world really work? How does the mind really work? Where's the truth in these things? And you can go down rabbit holes, and it still comes back to me of, I want to live well and see those around me live well. I want to run a winning team. Mm-hmm. That's probably programmed into me, but from my father being a successful rugby coach, my brother's a rugby coach, my uncle's a rugby coach. Nice. So it's like, how is my team doing? I like learning about all these things, but then how does my team win? Mm-hmm. And so it always comes back to me to that of like, okay, how are they living relative to what I just learned and what I'm experiencing? Mm-hmm. And if I spend too much time wanting to delve into really deep spiritual stuff, it feels like, okay, but like there's a fire over here, like there's stuff going on that needs to be dealt with, and I don't like going in there too deep and staying too long in stuff that is really difficult to wrestle with and see exactly how it's going to benefit real lives. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it gives like a underpinning of assurance and a frame of reference to understand others. So it's like both the things are kind of battling against each other in a way.
Yeah. As it kind of should, right? Like, it's like this balancing act.
Yeah.
How do you think you would, or maybe kind of like last closing remarks, and thanks for letting me go back and forth. How do you see like a way that you would use human design, or like that you'd apply it, or maybe for in a team sense or your sense, or how do you see using it? Yeah,
I was recommended that I go deeper into it by Chandler, a friend of mine who has done really well for himself in business. We met up recently in Florida, first time face to face, but I can see he's a good man. He's a successful man. We've shared common histories of like really getting into bodybuilding and stuff, and then getting into business, and then having a bit more of a spiritual lens on things. He's really into meditation, Dispenza, exploring consciousness. So we've got a lot in common. And he said, you need to look at this again. So he wanted to know what I am, but he was also like, if I'm working with staff, like that's the first thing that I want to know. So I've used other tests, and most businesses are using psychological profiling tools to understand who they're working with. So on that recommendation, like I wanted to go deeper into it, and then you had already mentioned it to me, and others have been telling me. Jordan Potts also brought it to me. So having the chance to discuss it with you makes it so much more real than just checking things out on YouTube. And I love that we have that within this network. And then we put it up in the group, and there's other men who've gone super deep on it as well. So that's the beautiful thing, is that there's these other experiences then, and they're first-hand experiences where you can communicate both ways. Sometimes people think, I'm just going to listen to the authority because they've got the most views on this on YouTube. But the problem with that is there's no two-way communication. Maybe you can, type in a little comment,
Yeah.
but the medium is the message. Like it matters the format of communication. If you can be face-to-face with someone, if you can even be live on a Zoom with them, having that dialogue is so much more valuable
Yeah.
to explore knowledge and to really take things on that stick with you. It's going to stick much more when you have that than just listening to the authorities and reading the book. And it's good to check out the author and the original source and those things, but that's what I'm excited about as well, to be able to use it with the team, see how they feel about what they're doing. Some of them might decide to explore it more, but also, I have my group of staff, which is effectively like how we're generating the project, but then everybody who's in is also part of the team. It's like an extended team or a different team where everyone has their role to play, and I can see it being super powerful for men figuring out how to interact with each other, and as another tool for getting into where they want to get to. And like straight up, like you in a way I feel like you've sort of called me out, and it's good because it's like a point of learning of like most men aren't actually that good at starting stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm good at starting stuff, so if my experience of life was like, well, you start it and then you get feedback off it and then you make it better and you go again.
Yeah.
And that's what works for me. And it's worked for me with everything that that I'm doing. Eventually it works when I keep following that loop. But understanding, okay, well, there's people who are really different to that, and wanting to understand that. And then if there are more generators, well, there's tons of work to be done, and there's a lot of manifestors. So how do we build those teams faster, and how do we create the economic relationships and things that support that? But yeah, the psychological relationships. And I'm sure there's going to be some reflectors and some, as you say, like just those 4 broad categories and the sub division of the manifesting generator, whatever. That's just one lens to look at a person through within this stuff. Everyone is completely unique. So it's really exciting to think, well, okay, we've got 250 men here who have decided to improve themselves. Now how can we interact with each other optimally to, or better ways with more awareness? Super exciting to think, and everyone who gets better, it makes it easier for them to help others to get better. And the possibilities are endless. I'll finish on this. The deck of cards. The number of possibilities for a deck of cards. First, he shared about the Rubik's Cube, and I think it was a quintillion possibilities with the Rubik's Cube.
Right.
Which is a lot. Like you can play randomly for a very, very long time before you arrive to like a solved cube. It's not going to solve itself.
Yeah.
But then the deck of cards is like a much, much, much bigger number of like, the number of possibilities is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
With 52 cards.
Yeah. That's, wow.
And now we're like, even just with 250 men or 1,000 men, you think like the infinite number of combinations between these abilities. And then it's also dynamic where, unlike a playing card, which stays the same, you're either a king or a 2 or whatever, there's an element of this that stays the same, as he's talking about the vehicle. But then there's the other factor of like how you're driving that vehicle. And so every playing card can become more valuable and can be used in a different way, or interact with others in a different way and generate something else, create something. So like that, the infinite possibilities are what excite me. Like the way that it is now is not the way it's always been. It's not the way it's always going to be. So, and that's exactly what you told me about my type, is that we're seeing other variations of the future that others aren't seeing yet.
Yeah.
And I've felt that for a while as well, but it's also reassuring and good to know that it's not going to be as intuitive for others to think in that way of like, obviously the future is going to be different to this. Obviously we've got these next passes to make in terms of how we eat or how we train or how we think or how we educate or how we do art. Like there's
totally
these the villages are a manifestation of that, where it's a different way of looking at things, and people are like, what are you doing that for? But then when you experience it, or you look at the success of Bali Time Chamber, nobody was doing that stuff before. In February this year, that concept was born when we were having a conversation in a village for a month, and now it sort of seems logical, and a lot of guys are thinking about it. But
Absolutely, bro.
yeah, I went through a lot of closing remarks there, but
No, it's good.
It's cool to
really good.
to think of what's possible. Yeah, what do you want to finish on?
Let's see. There's a couple of things you said that are really cool. One, the infinite expression. So that I think that alone is really beautiful. Just like the cards you're saying, 52. So like 64 hexagrams. Just let's peer into that for just one moment. So there's 9 energy centers. Each one has, I think, 10 gates or so. Each gate has 6 expressions. Each line of the gate has so 6 expressions, and then each one of those has another expression. That's held within a planet. Like, think of the fractaling of possibility that's there, and then when we start to interact with it. So that's one thing. And then I was going to mention, the villages. Like, this is where I think this human design system becomes really powerful, because now it's a language that we all use. And when we're living into our design and it's working out for people, then we don't need to assume anymore. Like, I know if I go into a room, it's best that I initiate something, or else it's uncomfortable, or the generator, these types of dynamics, right? So it just gives us a way to play at our strengths and maybe improve at our weaknesses, and not play at such a guessing game. And with the note of uncommon and everything that you're developing and you're growing, I think these things become real when we agree they're real. We start to, like, all these weird people think stuff is just weird and out there until enough people get their hands on it, and they see, well, now look at this new upgraded subset of human who's doing things in these unusual ways. And that's what I think is most exciting. Like, uncommon is this, like, hot pot where there's, like, let's say shitty stuff, for lack of a better word, may be refuted, but there's always an open mind. And I have a very weird and wonderful open mind, and I've been very widely accepted. So that's a powerful place, for anything to grow and evolve. Yeah.
Fun times.
Yeah. Thanks, brother. That was awesome.
That's good.
Peace.